to another Campman Show. I'm your host, Miss Cybulski, and I am so glad that you are here with us today. We are now in the beginning of Lent, which is awesome, great, fantastic. I hope that your Lenten promises are going well, But if not, get back up again. It's okay. We all fail. So if you are like, crap, I already done messed up, which happens to all of us, pick yourself up and try again. And it's awesome and it's great. So good stuff. During this Lenten season, some of the things we want to focus on in this podcast are the three biggies that we always hear with Lent: praying, fasting, and almsgiving. And today we're going to focus on fasting. I feel like that's normally what we turn to. I think Father Logue maybe even said that in his homily last week. But we normally turn to, okay, what am I going to give up for Lent? What food am I going to give up for Lent? What drink am I going to give up for Lent? And so we turn to that fasting. What are we fasting from? And I think that is so good. I think that is so good that we turn to give up those things. Sometimes it's like those unhealthy habits. You're like, ooh, 3 bowls of ice cream after dinner is really bad. I don't know who's having 3 bowls of ice cream after dinner, but if you do, hit me up. I will become your best friend because I will also have 3 bowls of ice cream after dinner every time if I could. So maybe sometimes it's unhealthy habits that we come up with, that we give up. But other times, I was just talking to somebody the other day about this. It's like, what are you doing for Lent? And they're like, I don't know. I don't really have any bad habits I need to give up. And I'm like, well, it's not always about bad habits. One of the things I'm doing for Lent is I am only drinking water and orange juice for Lent. Orange juice, because I always have a cup of orange juice in the morning. It helps me take any pills I need to take. I'm good to go. So that means no chai teas, no Coke slushies. But I'm giving those things up for Lent. And no, it's not unhealthy for me to have 1 chai latte a week or a Coke slushie a week. Maybe you could consider that unhealthy, but it's not, dangerously unhealthy. I am going to die from the amount of chai lattes I have per week. So why do I give that up? Why am I giving up something that's not bad for me? It goes to temptation, Okay, so pause. Here we go. Break it down now. So if I can say no to things in my life, so, already we're only less than a week in. I am at moments, I'm like, maybe I just want a chai tomorrow. That would be so good. Or I'm like, I really want my Coke slushie. So I have these desires for these things. And I'm like, I really, really, really want that. But I turn and I say, no, I'm not going to. Even though it's a good thing, I'm not going to. And I'm going to say no. And so the purpose of that is so that when we get faced with temptation, because throughout our life we're going to get faced with temptation, it looks good sometimes. It's very desirable. I mean, go back to Adam and Eve in the garden. That tree of the knowledge of good and evil, it looked good. It looked good and it was desirable. It wasn't like, that tree's got some worms on it. I'm not going anywhere. No, it was I would like to eat from that tree. And so the temptation and the sin that we get, or the temptation we get faced with, it looks good. You're like, I want to do that, or I want that. But we still have to say no. And by saying no to these things over here, that maybe it's a little easier to say no to them, or maybe it's not because they're bad that we're saying no to them. We're kind of training ourselves to then say no to these temptations over here. And that's to help us in the future. So yeah, sometimes we give up things because they're bad for us and they're not so great. Other times we give up things because it is that practice of saying no, of denying ourselves of what we want. Because again, I really want my chai, but no, I'm not going to have it. Same thing with temptation. I really want to punch my sister in the face right now, but I'm going to say no because that's not good. And not that I'm giving that up for Lent, but that helps me in the future to say no to those things. So that's a little bit of why we do fasting and why it's not always, I'm giving up something bad, it's something else. But I also want to point out, so A lot of times we talk about fasting when it comes to food or when it comes to drinks or something like that, like, okay, I'm giving up this. But I want to draw your attention to, are there other things in our life that we can fast from? You know, what other things can we give up? And I think that's sometimes looking at our life and what do we spend a lot of our time doing? Whenever I get a break personally, I'm like, can I throw on a episode of Parks and Rec? Can I throw on an episode of The Office? Can I throw on an episode of this or that or another thing? Or maybe I'll just sit down and watch a movie, you know, and not that that's bad, but I spend time doing that, you know, and something I enjoy doing. Like another thing I'm giving up is TV in any variety, which is gonna be rough, but that's okay. And so that's giving up not food, that's giving up not like something to drink, but that's giving up an idea of something, that TV. Another thing is our phones. Maybe you realize you spend way too much time on one app. Maybe you're like, I don't need to give it up, but I definitely spend a lot of time doing this. Then say no to that. And again, that's that training, you know. Maybe you're like, I just love online shopping. I buy a whole bunch of stuff and then I return most of it, but I buy a lot of stuff because I want to try it on, I want to see how it looks. Maybe this is when you say no to that, you know, because you spend a lot of time doing that. Play around with it. If you have given up something, awesome, great, keep going with it. If you want to add a little bit more on, not a bad idea, feel free to. If you haven't gotten that far yet, you're like, oh right, Lent did start. What was I giving up again? Feel free to pick something up. And I would really encourage you, sit down and look at what do I spend a lot of my time doing and give that up. And maybe give it up completely, that would be awesome. Or maybe it's, okay, I'm gonna limit myself. Maybe you look at it, you check your screen time and you're like, wow, I spend 6 hours on TikTok a day. Oh, that's probably not the best. And maybe you limit yourself to 2 hours on TikTok. You know, that you don't cut it out all the way, but you limit it and you say no to it in that way. So just some ideas. Fasting is really good and really awesome. It allows us to come closer to God. You know, giving up what's around us for His sake is such a sacrifice. And it's so beautiful to Him. And then furthermore, working on saying no to something that's good and something we want in order to say no to temptation in the future so that we can turn towards God. So this week, look at what you're doing for fasting. Maybe up it a little bit, or maybe stick where you're at because you're doing great. I will be praying for you this week with all of your Lenten promises, that God may give you the strength, the courage that you need. And guess what? I guess I'll see you next week on the Campman Show. Peace out. Bye. Wait, hold on. Not done yet. I know you thought we were, but we're not yet. Because guess what? We are going to have a special segment from Father Logue for a hot second. We're just going to call it Minute to Win It. And so here it is, Father Logue with your minute to win it.
Hey, you ever wonder why we don't eat meat on Fridays? This wasn't just something that was picked randomly, but it has a very specific purpose. Back before Jesus, the way the Jewish people told God they were sorry was with animal sacrifices. And we know Jesus, as the Lamb of God, is that one perfect sacrifice. And since His sacrifice on the cross on Good Friday, we no longer need to sacrifice animals as a way to say we're sorry to God. And so the church decided a great way to remember that and to celebrate the fact that we don't need this anymore is to not eat meat on Fridays. So when we don't eat meat on Fridays, we're not just doing it randomly, we're remembering Jesus' sacrifice. Phew! 1 minute.